In this video, we're going to be discussing the critical step of how to install exhaust studs the correct way. So you might be wondering why I'm making a video on how to install exhaust studs. Well, because they get messed up while being installed quite often, and I wanted to make this video so you know how to install them correctly. And we're going to be using this 10mm universal installer remover. CAT uses a 10mm exhaust stud on their C7, C9, C11, C13 engines. And there's actually an inside and an outside on the exhaust stud. If it has a letter, that is to go to the outside. And the flush face is supposed to go to the inside. And we'll be discussing that more when I show you installing them. You also want to put anti-seize, high temp copper based anti-seize on the threads that are going into the head and for the nuts. And these are the installers going to be using. And Ossenmacher actually make these. I'll put a link in the description where to get them. Now you might have seen these universal remover installers. I have one of these and they work, but they're very large and they don't fit in many places. So we'll be using the smaller ones and they're much easier to use. So as you can see on this head, I've gone ahead and installed all the exhaust studs and I've only put them in finger tight. Now this is where you want to put your anti-seize initially. You want to put it on the flush cut portion of the stud. It doesn't need to be dripping off of there, you only need a little bit. And you see the lettered side goes towards the outside. And exhaust studs are not going to be torqued like a normal bolt because they're actually seated into the head. So the next step you're going to do after you install it finger tight is you're going to put your correct size exhaust stud installer on there. And you're going to leave about 3/8 of an inch gap. And the reason for that is when you go to torque it, you need a little bit of room for the installer not to bottom out against the flange on the head. And these are 1/2 inch drive or 7/8 if you have a socket. Now question, what do you torque the stud to? This is a 10mm stud, so do you put it on finger tight, just snug, or the 10mm standard torque of 41 foot-pounds? Because I've heard all these answers before, and what is the correct one? That is if you said any of them. It actually torques to 26 plus or minus 4 foot-pounds. Because remember, the stud is not actually like a normal bolt where you are not bottoming it out and you're stretching the bolt. On this one, you're seating it inside of the threaded bore. So you don't need to torque it to 41. You're simply seating it in the bore. So you only need to seat it at 26 foot-pounds. So now we've installed it and torqued it. And you'll notice there's going to be some flat spots wherever you used your installer. But that's okay, because those flat spots, they're not as deep as they look. Also, you're not going to be putting a nut over where the flat spots are. The nut will be on the end. Now you want to install some anti-seize on the other end of the stud right now, because you want to put anti-seize anywhere where there's a fastener, and the nut's going to be on that end. So this is already installed, but let's say you wanted to remove all your exhaust studs. Now this is also very useful for removing exhaust studs. So you basically just stick it on and put it in counterclockwise rotation, and it'll cinch itself up and it'll take the stud off. The one downside with this is sometimes it can be a pain to get the stud out of the remover. I've used a pair of channel locks and I used to just grab it and then turn it clockwise and it would pop them out, but I found a little bit easier trick, and that is to basically just tap the stud. Couple quick taps and it'll usually come right out of there. So that's the proper way to install exhaust studs on your heavy-duty engine. So after this point, you would obviously install your gasket, your exhaust manifold, your spacer, your washer, and your nut. Now remember, the nut is going to be torqued to the standard 10mm torque, and that is 41 foot-pounds. And after that, of course, obviously you'd want to work from the inside nuts towards the outside, and that is how you install exhaust studs. Thank you for watching.